Hi everyone, this is your RE lesson for this week. We're going to look at how to explain how religious sources are used to provide answers to important questions about life and mortality. So we've got two short tasks to do, but let's take you through this presentation so you can understand them. So our big question, of course, is what does it mean to be a Buddhist? What do they believe? How do they live? And as I've said today, explaining how religious sources, so how stories, texts, are used to provide answers to important questions about life and mortality, so life and death. Um, People often use religion as a way of trying to understand what life means. What's the point of it all? Why are we here? What should we be trying to do? How should we be trying to live? What does a good life look like? And so they try and answer these questions that sort of deepen, one leads to another. So today's questions that we're going to focus on, though, what do Buddhists believe the meaning of life is? What do Buddhists believe will happen to a person when they die? So by the end of the lesson, you should be able to see how Buddhism tries to provide answers dealing with questions around life and death, understand what we mean by the word karma, and understand why karma is so important to Buddhists. So we're going to start with a story. Pay attention, and because you're going to answer. So, and then your reactions, your immediate reactions and responses to this story, I want you to record on your J2 worksheet. So let's have a look. So this is the story of Kisa Gotami and the mustard seed. So during Buddha's time, so when Buddha was alive, there lived a woman named Kisa Gotami. She married young and gave birth to a son. One day, the baby fell ill and it died soon after. Kisa Gotami loved her son greatly and refused to believe that her son was dead. She carried the body of her son around the village, asking if there was anyone who could bring her son back to life. The villagers all saw that the son was dead, and there was nothing that they could do. There was nothing that could be done. They advised her to accept his death and make arrangements for a funeral. In her grief, she could not accept this. She fell upon her knees and clutched her son's body close to hers, and she began weeping and crying. A villager took pity on her and suggested that she go and consult Buddha. Kisagutami was extremely excited upon hearing the elder's words, so she immediately went to Buddha's residence and pleaded for him to bring her son back to life. Kisagutami, he said, I have a way to bring your son back to life. Kisagutami was overjoyed. My lord, I will do anything to bring my son back. So Buddha said, if that is the case, what I need you to do for me, I need you to find something. Bring me a mustard seed. But it must be taken from a house where no one who lives in that house has ever lost a family member. Bring that seed back to me, and your son will come back to life. So let me just repeat that condition. So she has to go around finding houses and asking anyone to give her a mustard seed, but she can only accept it if it comes from a house where no one who's living in that house has ever lost a family member. If she brings that seed back, her son will come back to life. So on with the story. Having great faith in Buddha's promise, Kisagutami went from house to house trying to find a mustard seed. At the first house, a young woman offered to give her some mustard seeds, but when Kisagutami asked if she'd ever lost a family member to death, the young woman said, unfortunately her grandmother had died a few months ago. Kisagutami thanked the young woman and explained that unfortunately the mustard seeds did not fulfill the Buddha's requirements, and so she moved on. She went to a second house. Unfortunately, there a husband had died only a few years ago. Another house, a third, and in that house they had recently lost an uncle. A fourth house, an aunt, a cousin. She kept moving from house to house, but the answer was always the same. Every house, in some way or another, had lost a family member to death. So Kisagutami finally came to realize what the Buddha had intended, that there was no one in the world who had never lost a family member to death. And she now understood that death is inevitable and a natural part of life. Putting aside her grief, she buried her son in the forest, and she then returned to the Buddha and became one of his followers. Okay, I don't want to say too much about the story. I want you to write down what your reactions are to the story. So on your J2 page, I'm going to come out of this in a second. Then I'll want you to pause the video and just write down what your reactions are to that story. What are your responses, feelings towards that story? What do you think of the moral of that story that she had at the end there, that realizing that death is an inevitable part of life and it's natural, and that she is not alone in her grief. It's not her own personal tragedy. It's something that, while it might be painful and uncomfortable, does happen to everyone. So what do we think of the story? Do you agree with the moral of the story? Do you disagree with the moral of the story? Do you think it was too harsh, a lesson to learn? Do you think that Buddha could have been kinder? Or do you think maybe that Buddha was cruel, but to be kind, like had to get her to realize something important? So your reactions, do you agree with it, disagree with it? If you could write that here, please, and try and fill up that space in this box here. So pause the video now, answer this into this box, and then when you're ready to carry on, start the video again. All right, if you're watching this now, I assume you've finished task 1. You've written all your reasons, your reactions and responses to the story, and I look forward very much to reading them. Now we're going to move on to what is meant by the word karma. You may have already heard of the word. Karma is a word that many people actually believe in. Some more, of course, Buddhists believe it, but actually quite a lot of people who aren't Buddhists believe in the idea of karma. So what it means is that they think that the actions that we do affect us, which they do, of course. If you do something good will happen to you. If you do something bad, then something bad will happen to you. This is not literal, is something that's important to remember. It's not like if you donate £5 to charity, then a month later a £5 note is just going to float down the street and smack you in the face. It's more you need to be on the lookout for where these moments happen. So when something good happens to you, anything good happens to you, it's possible that it's because you did something good before. And likewise, when you do something bad, the idea then is that you might be there when you're thinking, this is so unfair, I didn't do anything to deserve this. Well, actually, maybe you did. And therefore, the responsibility is on you. And if you have the responsibility, well, then that means you can change it and you can affect things to make sure that only good, or at least very few bad things, ever happen to you. So Buddhists believe that we might lead many lives, so not just this one. They believe that you will be what's called reincarnated, that after you die, you will come back again. And when you come back, though, you'll come back as a different person, and you won't have any memory of your previous life. So imagine I grow old. When I die, I'm born again. I will not remember what it was to be Mr. Cummins. I won't remember the life of the guy who grew up, did bits and pieces, became a teacher, and worked at St. Mary's School. I won't be able to remember any of that. But they believe that if you had a good previous life, you will have a happier next life. I hope that makes sense. But also, if you led a bad life, where you maybe always nasty, short-tempered, cruel, jealous, resentful, unkind, mean, well, then you're going to have a bad life on your next one. Or it might affect you in the life you're having now. So if you're doing good things now, hopefully good things are going to happen to you within this life. And if you're doing bad things now, they should affect you within this life too. But overall, if you've lived a good life overall, you should have a better life next. And overall, if you've lived a bad life, you should have a worse life next. The idea is to realize that if you're having a bad life, you should be trying to have a good life despite how much pain and suffering you think you're going through, despite how unfair you think it all is, you should still be trying to have a good life, because that way you're still trying to make it better in your current life, and you will be rewarded with a better life in the next life. Buddha himself told a story, this one bit here in the middle, of a cousin who tried to actually kill Buddha by dropping a boulder on him. And it didn't work. The attempt failed. The Buddha's foot was injured, though, and Buddha believed that this was a karma, or what they call karmic retribution, so a karma retaliation, if you like, for trying to actually kill his stepbrother in a previous life. So that this is something that a previous Buddha had done. So karma determines where a person will be reborn and how they'll live their next life. So good karma could result in being born into one of the heavenly realms, the best places you can be. It's a bit like similar to the reaching enlightenment phase that we looked at in the previous lessons. But bad karma could cause rebirth as an animal or torment in a hell realm. So it might be really extreme and you go to a sort of hell-like place. It could mean that you spend a life as an animal, which of course you would not enjoy as much. Again, you wouldn't remember your previous life, but again, it's trying to put your soul in a way back in touch with life isn't fair, life is harsh and cruel sometimes, as you saw in the first few lessons, but that doesn't mean you can't try and make the best of it rather than playing a victim and playing the woe is me card all the time. So let's look at this quote, which is what I want you to write down your thoughts and feelings. As you sow, so shall you reap. Sow means plant, as you plant things, as in if you plant seeds, so shall you reap. Reap means acquire and harvest. It's a metaphor using fruit to explain if you sow good deeds, so if you plant good deeds, then you will get good fruit. However, if you sow bad deeds, bad seeds, you're going to get rotten fruit. So if you do something bad this morning, that doesn't mean something bad is going to happen to you this afternoon. The bad thing might happen to you way down the line, but it'll be because you did. Maybe, let's imagine maybe you tell a lie, and then that, deep down that you've told a lie. Now, you've already done something bad to yourself, your own soul, because you lied, and that hopefully leaves you with a little bit of guilt for lying. But let's imagine a little ways down the line that someone finds out about the lie. So you planted the seed of the lie, and now the fruit, the harvest, has come up, and it's come back to bite you, as it were. So you sowed the rotten fruit, and now you've got the rotten fruit to live with. But just the same, obviously, it could be good things. Though maybe you do a good thing, you give a very kind and generous gift to someone, and that makes them feel good, and then you, of course, feel good for doing it, which in itself is a reward. You feel good for giving a good gift, but also later on, maybe they'll give you a good gift later on. You do a good deed for someone else, hopefully they will do something for you. Pay it forward. There's a little quote here as well. Karma, what you put out will come back to you in unexpected ways. Give only what you don't mind getting back to you. So on to your last task. Keep that quote in mind. As you sow, so shall you reap. What I would like you to do, these same questions are waiting for you on your J2 page. Let's go and have a look at that. I want you to explain what is meant. I know I've just explained it. I want you to pretend now that you're writing to a year 4 child, and you're going to explain what that quote means. So as you sow, so shall you reap. Explain what karma means by explaining the meaning of that quote. Give examples if you can, like I just did with telling a lie or giving a gift or giving someone a compliment. A debate question for you to consider in your answer. Do people always reap what they sow? There are bad people in the world, unfortunately, who are successful, and they go on to live very, should we say, successful lives. But remember, this is not our only life as far as Buddhism is concerned. Maybe they won't get their punishment in this life. Maybe their punishment is waiting for them in the next life. Maybe just because they've got lots of money or something doesn't mean they won't have some kind of tragedy come to them in some way. And lastly, so also in your answer, try and explain why Buddhists believe karma is important. How does it inform the way you live your life? If you're always aware of it, how does that change and affect how the rules that you live your life by? What would happen to people who practice good karma compared to people who practice bad karma? All right. So yeah, try and explain what is meant by that phrase. As you sow, so shall you reap. Explain karma as though you were talking to a year 4 child. You're trying to make it really clear to them what karma is through using that quote, and maybe some examples of good deeds being rewarded and bad deeds being rewarded in their own way. Okay. If please obviously remember to save your work, guys, using the save button, and use the J2 message function if you need to speak to us. And we'll talk to you then.